had a lot of cavity problems when I was living in Houston, which has fluoridated its water for many, many decades. And I used for many, many decades fluoridated toothpaste and went to the dentist regularly, twice a year. And yet I had cavities. The fluoride did nothing to abate the cavities that I was experiencing. However, when I stopped eating the sugary cereals and I stopped drinking soft drinks and I stopped chewing gum, the cavities went away. Gee, I wonder why. And I find it interesting, too, that none of these federal agencies which promote fluoride, Health and Human Services, EPA, CDC, FDA, will accept responsibility or liability for the safety of the program or the chemicals used in it. So I find that very interesting. Now, why will the ADA and the CDC never say that fluoride, well, we've changed our mind, fluoride is bad for you? Why? Because this would open them up to massive class action lawsuits after they've been using this toxic chemical in people like human guinea pigs for over half a century. That's why they're never going to admit to it. Now, the FDA has never approved fluoride for ingestion. They even list fluoride as an unapproved drug. I strongly recommend that these health professionals read the case against fluoride by Dr. Paul Condit, and to please do so with an open mind, not with the usual gibberish handed down by the ADA and some of their people. Now let's take a look at some of the nonsense that they've been promoting. Who was one of the strongest proponents of fluoridation? Harold Carpenter Hodge from the University of Rochester was the chief toxicologist for the U.S. Army's Manhattan Project. In her book, The Plutonium Files, Eileen Wellsome documents that during that project, Hodge supervised experiments in which unsuspecting hospital patients were injected with uranium and plutonium. After the war, Hodge chaired the National Research Council's Committee on Toxicology and became the leading scientific promoter of water fluoridation in the United States. Now, I strongly urge each of you to read the books. You all got copies just before Thanksgiving. I brought them here thanks to Dr. Holst. And this will give you a much better explanation of just how toxic these things are. Now, we're supposed to be a country that gives us freedom of choice. We can walk into any doctor's office or any dentist's office and they can give us a prescription for whatever may ail us. By law, whether it's in the U.S. or Canada, they cannot force us to take that medication. Yet these fluoride proponents want us, against our will, to take this unapproved drug, that's the FDA's own term, to take this unapproved drug against our will, against our wishes, which is totally out of question, simply because nowhere in the Declaration of Independence, United States Constitution, or the Bill of Rights does the government grant any government agency, federal, state, county, or local, the power to force us to take any type of a drug of any kind against our will. Now, and speaking of which, by the way, for the benefit of the dear gentleman, the legislator, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution guarantees us a Republican form of government. If anyone in this room can find where the Founding Fathers used the word democracy anywhere in these documents, I will bet them $1,000 cash. So let's say put up or shut up, like they say in Las Vegas. Now, if you want to look at the CDC and some of their track records, I've written to you and I've read to you before in the previous City Council meeting how it was the CDC that sent chemical and biological weapons to Saddam Hussein in the 1980s with their full knowledge and consent, weapons like 3 strains of anthrax, 6 strains of bacteria that make botulism toxin, and 3 strains of the bacteria that cause gas gangrene. Iraq later admitted to the UN that it had made weapons out of all 3 of these. Plus, the CDC
John,
also...
5 minutes, unless there's another speaker that would care to yield their 5 minutes to you.
I just need another minute, if I may.
Okay.
The CDC also sent samples of a strain of West Nile virus to an Iraqi microbiologist at a university in the southern city of Basra in 1985. And now the CDC was saying in 2004 that it's okay to leave mercury in flu shots for children. It's not going to hurt them at all. If this were an old mercury thermometer and I dropped it on the floor and it shattered, you would have to clear the room and call out the hazmat unit. Yet the CDC is telling us, oh, don't worry, this isn't toxic. And I'm still waiting for one member of this governing body to explain why every box of fluoridated toothpaste has a federally mandated warning telling you, if accidentally swallowed, to call a doctor or the Poison Control Center immediately, not tomorrow, immediately. Yet on non-fluoridated toothpaste, there is no federally mandated warning anywhere. So that tells me and anyone with half a brain that it isn't the toothpaste which is toxic, it's the fluoride added to the toothpaste which make it toxic. And if you read the book thoroughly as I did, The Case Against Fluoride, then any right-thinking person will say, I don't want this garbage in my water. And by the way, there is a zero tolerance, as this fine gentleman brought out a while ago, there is a zero government tolerance for arsenic in the water and cadmium in the water, and yet this fluoride leaches those chemicals and brings them into the water and delivers them to the unsuspecting public. I thank you, gentlemen.